All right, 7 p.m. I'll open the meeting rather. So let me see. The first thing we have on our agenda is approval of the minutes of 5/9/24. Oh, your video is working, Melissa. There you go.
Coming.
Oh, and Liz made it too. Great. Are there any edits, comments for the minutes of 5/9?
Great.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington. Oh, sorry, Kevin, I didn't hear you.
He's on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry.
I have to scream really loud to be heard.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Abstain. I was absent. All right, 7 p.m. Request for determination of applicability, 11 Corderville Road, Rural Cemetery. In accordance with Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southwest Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, May 30th, 2024 at 7 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination of applicability for a project located at 11 Corderville Road, Rural Cemetery, map 44, lot 00. For the applicant, William Cundiff. The project description is to allow a staging area for cemetery operations support.
Yes, so we have Bill here, who is our DPW director. So Bill, I will let you take it away unless there's anything you want me to start with.
Thank you, Bill Cundiff. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, Melissa, I'm not sure if you have the ability to call up the drawings on your screen or not. If not, I'm happy to do it from here.
Yeah, I can. Just give me 1 second.
Okay. I'd start with the locus map. So early in February of this year, the DEP received a complaint from an anonymous resident or an anonymous source. We don't know if it's a resident. The complaint included, which I've included in the RDA application, so you know what the scope was. And actually, interestingly, the Solid Waste Department reached out to the Board of Health because the nature of the complaint had to do with some cans of wasp spray and miscellaneous activity that's going on in and around the wetlands or near the wetlands. So I met with Heather Ackler, the health agent, and we walked the site. We determined, because the complaint was non-specific about where the activity was, we determined that the area that they were interested in was actually right behind the Conservation Commission office parking lot. It's actually cemetery jurisdiction property that's about 10,000 square feet in area, where we've been for the past number of years. I tried determining when it began, but I looked at ortho photos that date back to 2000, and there was activity in this area back then. I spoke with Chris Leroy, the operations supervisor, and he's indicated that, you know, this has been a long-standing area where support is provided for cemetery operations. So basically, it's when a grave is excavated, we have surplus soils. We'll stockpile the soils in this area. We'll also maintain stone and different materials that are directly associated with the operation of the cemetery at 11 Corderville Road. So regarding the complaint, we did clean up the cans of wasp spray, and we actually moved some equipment that the highway department had there, not highway, but cemetery and rec had stored there. We moved that out. Any equipment that contained any kind of fluids, we moved out of there. And basically, I did some mapping. So the map you're looking at now shows the area in red that we utilize for staging. There's a steep side slope to the west of that area where you see the 35 feet. The GIS mapping shows that 35-foot setback from the closest point of disturbance to what they show as the resource area. I do recognize that these resource areas are only approximate, but the topography out there is very clear. And I believe it's just simply at the toe of slope, which may be 25 to 35 feet if I had to guess. We put up a row of straw wattles along that entire edge to make sure that no erosion could make it down toward the wetland. And in fact, the topography is such that there's a little incline before the slope drops off. So the water would not have a direct route to the wetland. And so we've been using this area for at least 20 years that I'm aware of, probably longer. The cemetery dates back to the late 1800s. And this is the oldest section of the cemetery that's immediately adjacent to this. So that's really about it. We've cleaned up the area and we're going to continue to clean up the area. And, you know, I've spoken to the operations people and I wanted to make sure that they understand that, you know, we need to make sure this is a very good example as to what we should be doing, and particularly because it's behind offices of the town as well as adjacent to the wetland. And that's really about it, unless anybody has any questions.
Is there any questions from the board members?
Just a quick one. I guess it's mostly for Melissa. Was there any evidence at all of any sedimentation reaching the wetland? No, okay. Yeah, and I looked at the aerial photos from 1995, and the resolution isn't great, but it really does appear that it was in use even back that far. Looking at it, I think there's a pretty long-term use. And if it's gone that long without having an impact to the resource area, I feel pretty comfortable with a negative determination.
Anyone else?
I would also agree with Ben that looking at those historic aerials, even though they're pretty grainy, it definitely had some, you know, overgrowth, tree tops, you know, previously historically that have since, you know, died off, not necessarily from DPW operations, but just the natural cycle of life. So it's definitely more easy to see now than previously. So that's probably why it's a little bit more apparent, but it definitely is. You know, Bill has looked, I've looked, and it sounds like Ben did as well. It's definitely historic use. You know, maybe some expansion, but definitely hasn't reached into the wetlands at all.
I do recall that this originated from a complaint about trash, the sense that it was kind of disorderly. And so I guess I would ask the question, what would be the plan going forward?
So I did speak with our groundskeeper and I spoke with our landscaper as well as our operations supervisor about maintaining that area, moving out unnecessary things, make sure it's well organized, keep the gates closed so that, you know, really for safety reasons, we don't want general public really getting into that area. But, you know, I'll be monitoring it. I've been here for the past 10 months or so. And, you know, I am very sensitive to protecting the resource area and making sure that we're doing what's right and setting an example for the community.
Okay.
I have a question about the straw wattles. So they're temporary, or are those going to be kind of a permanent solution? And how frequently will they be refreshed?
Okay, so one of the first things I did was ask that straw wattles be erected regardless of if they were doing anything. They are sitting up on top of a little shelf So topographically, you have a low point, goes up, the wattles are on top of that shelf, and then it drops off to the wetland. It's really an added layer of protection. I don't expect that that they're required. I did it as a proactive measure, knowing that we will be coming to the commission, and certainly if the commission wants it maintained, they can make a condition to that effect, and we'll make sure that gets maintained.
Thank you.
I would expect over time that as the straw wattles sort of deteriorate, that they'll become part of the landscape and become an additional mound there. But certainly, you know, as Bill said, we could certainly condition that they continue to maintain a, you know, an active and working straw wattle barrier. If that's something the commission, you know, is desiring to do.
Will be honest that I don't think a straw wattle added on, you know, every year or such will make any sort of difference. You know, I think Bill is right. There is that nice little shelf. I think, yeah, it's if as long as the activities are staying the same, you know, there's not going to be that disturbance that would cause that erosion. So maybe, Bill, unless you do something like if you're moving stockpiles or extra soil, that might come into play then, but maybe for just the average use, yeah, letting that straw wattle continue to build up that kind of shelf as is, and then if you have any disturbing activities, then it could be something gets put down in the meantime.
Certainly.
What I'm hearing is that for the last 25 years, since 1999, there really hasn't been any impacts. So, you know, from my perspective, I think we're good.
And it's cleaner now than it was 6 months ago, so there's a benefit.
Good.
And Bill, would you feel comfortable with if we conditioned a negative determination that chemicals not be stored there, like the wasp spray and so forth? With that,
Absolutely.
Ben, would you want the same? We usually tag team that with refueling.
I think that'd be a great idea. It's adjacency to the wetlands. If there's in particular, I mean, if there's a place where you could do refueling activities on top of a paved surface, obviously that's the best solution.
Right.
Okay, do I hear a motion for a negative determination of applicability with the provisions that Ben just recited?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Okay.
Yes.
Barrington, Upton,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Passmotto.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. I'll touch base, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is 710, request for determination of applicability, 107 Main Street. In accordance with Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, May 30th, 2024 at 7:10 p.m. by a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination of applicability for a project located at 107 Main Street, map 52, lot 11, for the applicant Matthew Morrow. The project description is a replacement of a subsurface sewage disposal system within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Keep Matt's just loading in.
Okay, I'm here.
What are you on the moon?
Good evening, everyone.
Doing a
So,
space shuttle on the moon or something?
actually, that is the just real quick, that's the bridge of the Jupiter 2. The backstory
Okay.
on that, for any of you that may have watched the series back in the 60s, the gentleman that played the pilot, Mark Goddard, was a personal friend of mine, and he passed away last October. So I'm doing this backdrop in his memory right now.
Oh, very nice.
May I be permitted to share screen, or Melissa, did you want to do it?
You are more than welcome. Yeah, as long as it's stuff that you've submitted to me, then you're all set.
Thank you very much. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes.
All right, good. So 107 Main Street has a septic system that currently is in failure. As a matter of fact, we're having episodes where we have to have it pumped frequently now because it is now backing up into the bathrooms in the house. What we're looking to do is we have a wetland system here that essentially borders on an intermittent stream that goes to the aqueduct, which is 500 feet to the south of the site. And we have a bordering vegetated wetland that kind of hugs around the driveway. So we're between 80 and 84 feet away from the bordering wetland on this side and the entirety of the buffer zone on this side. So there's nothing going on in the buffer zone here, and about half of the leach field, a very small corner of this new tank proposed, and some of the sewer main is actually within the buffer zone. That totals about 700 square feet of impact in the buffer zone out of the 1,400 square feet that is proposed for the job. We have erosion based on comments from Joe from Lucas Environmental. Hi, Joe. See you on the screen there. We have erosion protection that we added here, here, and expanded here. They're labeled as box 8 in light blue, which has erosion controlled and limit of work area. We also added a temporary stockpile area in case it's needed and outlined it right here. This job, if there's anything stockpiled, it's not going to be stockpiled for long. This job should take a week to do, maybe 2 at the maximum, if we have weather events that interrupt the work. Other than that, that's all I have submitted on the RDA for consideration. Thank you.
And just so commissioners are aware, I did put in my notes because I talked with the homeowner because he has 2 hazardous pine trees. I think one has already fallen, and they're just going to be repaving their driveway sometime this year, which is exempt, but just wanted to be noted since, you know, it's in front of us. And there'll be other work, just so the commissioners are aware that that is something that will be happening on this property. You know, doesn't need necessarily a permit for it, but has been discussed, can be administratively approved. But since we have this in front of us, just wanted to let you know.
Thank you for that.
Where's the 50-foot boundary between the wetland that's on the east side and the septic system? Is that on this? I can't see.
I don't
That's on
have
the plan.
that drawn in, unfortunately. Here is the 100-foot. Here is the line measuring from this particular area about 84 feet.
84
So,
feet.
Yep. So I'm assuming that the line here that actually is the approximate water line probably intersects 50 feet at some point.
Can you confirm the system is going to be outside the 50-foot?
It's definitely going to be outside the 50 foot.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
80, like between 80 and 84 feet would be the closest point right here with the grading. So
Okay. And is there any sort of clay barrier or anything that's proposed for the septic system for protection?
not that I'm aware of.
Not sure. Okay.
This appears to be a geomat system. It does have Board of Health approval, by the way. I forgot to mention that.
I was going to ask you that next. Yeah. Okay. And is it elevated from what's there now?
Oh, no, actually it's blending in with existing grading. The existing grading around that area is 100. This is a yard. It's pretty flat. It's going to remain around 100. May go up about 6 inches because it is a geomat system. It's made to be flat. It's made to allow this system to be installed without a heavy amount of grading change.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments from the commission members? Okay, and so I see you have the erosion control barriers proposed in the plan, so I know I'm thinking a negative determination of applicability based on the plan with the erosion control barriers as shown on the plan. Anybody disagree? No. All right, do you hear a motion as such?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
We lost Melissa?
I did call you, yeah. Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington, Upton,
Yeah,
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
All right, Matt, I should be able to have this emailed over to you tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
You as well. Okay, let's see. Oh. 720, request for determination of applicability, 15 Pine Hill Road. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, May 30, 2024, at 7:20 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination of applicability for a project located at 15 Pine Hill Road, map 69, lot 30, for the applicant and owner Chelsea T. Wellman. The project description is the replacement of a failed septic system.
Dan McIntyre representing the homeowner. Their system at 15 Pine Hill Road has failed. They're proposing to replace it with a new septic system. See if I can just share the screen here. Can everyone see that, what I put up?
Yes.
Okay. So to orientate you, Pine Hill Road is over on the left-hand side of the plan. There's a common driveway coming down to 15 Pine Hill Road. And then beyond that, 17 Pine Hill Road. We had the wetlands delineated by Goddard Consulting. The commission looked at this plan probably back in 2012, 2013, when these lots were created. And the current delineation is pretty close to the original delineation when the lots were developed. The septic system is in the side yard right here. The existing one and the proposed one, essentially in the same location, which is entirely outside the 100-foot buffer. What we're really here tonight is to seek approval to have the construction vehicles come down the driveway and cross part of the lawn, which is in the 100-foot buffer. We did put up erosion controls on the other edge of the driveway to trap any sediments that may come off the pavement or off the truck wheels. And then once the system is in this area, the buffer zone will be restored back to its original condition as lawn. And I think with that, I can open up to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any of the commission members have any questions, comments? I'm seeing head shakes left to right. All right, well, with that, I think we have a another negative determination of applicability. So we're looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Sorry, did I hear you? I can't hear you, Liz.
We can't hear you asking. I can't personally hear you ask my name
Oh.
until you, but yes, the answer is
Okay.
yes.
Sorry. Zulik, yes. Barrington. Oh,
Yes.
great. Okay. Upton,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
Sorry, I think it's my internet, so it's cutting me out. Thanks, guys. All right, Dan, I will also get this to you probably tomorrow morning.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have 5 minutes before we can do the next one. Do you want to take care of new and or continued business? I guess number 3, request for extension, Iabella Estates, Lorenzo Drive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So they have requested a 3-year extension. This is Iabella Estates off Mount Vickery. It is still currently in the progress of being built, so they have requested 3 years, and this is a stormwater management permit only.
Okay. Any discussion? I'm pretty sure they're there every day. Oh. All right, so do I hear a motion to grant the request for extension for 3 years for SMP 20-3?
So moved.
Was there a second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
Bulick,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmodo.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, is there anything else we can take care of in 4 minutes or less?
I can at least do the update on open and active sites real quick.
Okay.
That's pretty. So let's see, what's been going on is 10 Turnpike, that was the self-storage, drive-through self-storage on Route 9. They have substantially completed like their physical construction. The building is up, the addition is up. They don't have final top coat. And Karina, the town planner, and I had some concerns regarding the finalization of the basins. Some amendments were changed based on some Mass DOT feedback. So they did a trench drain along the driveway that they need to submit to us supplemental information, and just some final grading of the basin. So they submitted an interim as-built. Karina and I took a hard look at it and came up with a slew of comments, of things that didn't seem in conformance with the original plan. So we've kind of volleyed it back to them, and they're getting those items rectified. A lot of it is mostly site work, landscaping. It's just that they're not done and they kind of getting ahead of themselves. Not to say that things are wrong per se, just not completed yet. For Ken's Foods, they're doing some work on that vault that's along Route 9 again. So today they reinstalled their temporary erosion controls that lead up to the building. So this is that underground utility system / water pump that had a break last year that they did, one section of the fix earlier this year, and they're just finishing it up now. So it's just a trench from the vault to the building. I think that'll be done by next week. And then once, they'll keep the erosion controls in until it's stabilized again. St. Mark's parking lot, the final plantings, paving, hydro seed is complete. This week they're doing final line striping, signage, and working on the bioretention seating and finalizing that. 78 Main Street, that new garage we permitted is completed. I just got the COC request, so I'm going to review that for completeness and then send it to Lucas, etc. And then I think the biggest progress is probably 84 Main. John Deli Priscoli gave me only a 11 by 17 hard copy of a potential as-built. He just wanted me to look at it to make sure it met all the requirements. So I have some comments that I am sending back to him, but I expect that certificate of compliance request to come in shortly. So I think that's the high topics, unless there's a site-specific question any of you have. Take that as a no. Love it. Okay. That's my updates. We have 30 seconds, I think.
Well, you did that in 3.5 minutes.
I know. I decided
good.
not to ramble.
Okay. So we're gonna have let's see, it's gonna be notice of intent, 20 Edge Hill Road, map 16 lot 6. That's construction of a single family home, driveway, and associated appurtenances. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Master Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, The Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, May 30th, 2024 at 7:30 PM by a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 28 Edge Hill Road, map 16, lot 6 for the applicant John Kiley. The project description is the construction of a single-family home, driveway, and other things.
Hi there. My name is Susan MacArthur with MacArthur Environmental Consulting. Also in attendance is Bert Corey from DGT Associates, Fred Scoble from DGT Associates, and John Kiley, who is the applicant and property owner. Melissa, do you want to put the plan up, or do you want me to?
It's totally up to you, whatever you like best.
I mean, you could do it if you want.
Sure.
The revised plan I sent you.
Yep.
So I could just get started while she's doing that. So on Monday, May 20th, I met Joe Orzel out on the site, and we went through the wetland delineation line and moved a number of flags. They have been adjusted up gradient, moved up gradient, in some cases just a few feet, but you'll see the revised line is on this plan, as well as the revised buffer zones. And as far as the buffer zones go, it hasn't changed much. It hasn't changed things too much. We're still, the driveway's still in, and the rain gardens are in. It does come up a little further, closer to the subsurface trenches. And then on the top, Melissa, if you want to pan a little bit at the top of the plan, the 100-foot buffer just slightly comes, the erosion controls are now slightly within the 100-foot buffer zone on that top side there. Then I had also looked at the trees. That's the last plan in this set. Melissa, if you want to just scroll to that. So we adjusted the number based on anything over 6 inches diameter breast height, DBH. And that came out to about 18 trees to be removed that are over 6 inches. And they're now labeled the size as well as the species on the plan. A lot of red maples. There's an apple tree, I think a few white pines, and I think a white ash. And let's see, what else did we do? Oh yeah, so the rain garden, now we on the sheet C3, which is, I believe, one up from that one. Yeah, I think at the bottom, it's hard to see, but the species are now listed, the species of plants that are proposed within the rain garden. And that consists of red maple, American hop hornbeam, sweet pepperbush, winterberry, red twig dogwood, highbush blueberry, and then like an understory of wetland seed mix, and on the kind of the upper slopes will be an erosion control seed mix. And let's see, an operation and maintenance plan someone had asked about for the rain gardens, and that is provided in the operation and maintenance plan that was sent over to you. It's not in this sheet, Melissa, but it was sent over as yeah, it was sent as a separate document. And the property owner will be on site, so the rain gardens will basically be maintained as any garden would, pulling the dead stuff, replanting as necessary. But that operation maintenance plan also includes the plan to maintain the systems maybe Bert, if you're on the call, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
The O&M also includes the roof seepage pits as well as the septic
Okay.
surveys before they go into the rain gardens. So it's a standalone document.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then invasive species management. There are patches of invasive species out there, as Joe had indicated, and primarily bittersweet. There's quite a bit of it in the woodlands. So during construction, the property owner is going to satisfactorily, to the commission satisfaction, dispose of the invasive species that are going to be removed. They'll bag it in black plastic trash bags and let it sit in the sun and bake, and then dispose of properly. Either that, or whatever the preferences of the of the commission, but they could bury it and then just keep it in check as far as making sure it doesn't resprout. And but the key is to make sure that it doesn't leave the site. So no seed stock that's live that's going to leave the site and then of course spread to other areas. That's what we don't want. And then someone had asked about, Joe had mentioned the abutter list. It was a few days past its expiration, so I requested a new one and did receive that. Nothing really changed. Well, there were -2 abutter. I don't know how that happened, but -2 that were on the original list, but everybody else was the same, so there was no need to re-notify anybody. And I think that was it. I know that there was a question about vernal pools. And Joe and I, Joe had a net and waders and did go into the 2 pools up by the road. And one of them, we did find an egg mass. They had already hatched out, but Joe, what did you say that was a bullfrog?
Yeah, through the chair. So in the larger of the ponds, there was a deteriorating salamander egg mass, which was likely spotted salamander. It couldn't be positive from the state of the egg mass, but it was definitely a salamander egg mass. And that pond also had, I saw an adult bullfrog and a number of bullfrog tadpoles. The pool, the smaller pool to just the north of that one, which is separated by a berm, did have wood frog tadpoles. So that one had sufficient evidence that it could be certified.
Okay. So regarding that, Mr. Kiley, the property owner, is reluctant to get it certified as far as the vernal pools they do extend off of his property, and he doesn't want to well, I'll let him talk because I don't want to put words in his mouth. John, if you're on this call, if you want to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Speak.
Hello?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'm just reluctant because I'm not the sole owner of that pool, and I'm not sure how the neighbor would want to do it. I mean, if someone wanted to go reach out to the neighbor and find out if we have this done and he agreed to it, I would agree to it. But this I mean, I don't understand why it's just these pools where the street, like across the street, also has pools, down the street has pools. I mean, is that going to open a can of worms? Because anybody could say, now I want to determine every one of these, and then, where I started it, the whole neighborhood would start hating me then, that's the only thing that I really object to.
It'd be a heck of a welcome wagon, huh?
Yeah, with the neighbor that I abut and then it's part of his pool has been very helpful with the building process. So I really do not want to burn his, I don't want to hurt him at all in any way. So
So I was not at the last meeting. Ben, if you want to step in.
Yeah, sure. No, we, in looking at GIS data, we saw that there was at least one potential vernal pool. So I asked Joe if we were too late in the season to take a look, and apparently we're just on the cusp to where there's still some evidence. And it sounds like one of them is likely more of a permanent pool. And then the other is likely a vernal pool. In terms of the impact on a property, this is simply the vernal pool certification process is cataloging of a sort of a critical habitat area, but in terms of buffer zones and restricting your use of the property and so forth, there's already a wetland surrounding it, and it doesn't create a more burdensome permitting situation for anyone doing future work. It simply adds to the state's catalog of where these critical habitat areas exist. And Joe, correct me if I got any part of that wrong, but I think that's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. The Southborough doesn't have any additional buffer zone requirements around the vernal pool as far as extended buffer zone. It's still a 100-foot buffer zone.
A quick question, if I may. With regards to the vernal pool, I just want to be clear. The buffer zone that's associated with the BVW is a buffer zone. Whereas if it's a vernal pool, that 100-foot, is it considered a buffer zone or is it considered a resource area? And does that change what could be developed within that 100 feet of the certified vernal pool?
Joe, I'm going to turn to you for that.
Under the state regs, if it's a certified vernal pool, or even if you have evidence that it's a certified vernal pool, if you're proposing to do work within the pool, that puts an extra burden on permitting if you're doing work within the pool itself. To be honest, I would need to double check on the regs as far as on the local bylaw regs, if the 100-foot buffer zone extends from the pool or if it's from the pool edge or from the BVW around it. Melissa, you've heard.
Yeah, I think when I was looking into this, it was the edge of the pool. So I think when I was talking with John last week, my explanation to him was, our local regulations are more stringent than the state regulations. So how we classify this area is how we're classifying it right now. So the determination and the conditions that the commission puts for this project, the certification of the vernal pool would not change, the conditioning of this project or, any potentials, because our local regulations are strict enough or are more stringent that we are already, the way that we look at it is if it's certifiable, then it, or has a potential, then in our minds, we consider it a vernal pool. So in terms of Southborough, it really doesn't make much of a regulatory impact, especially on this particular project, because your approval would be your approval regardless of if it gets certified after you submit your information or not, because of our local regulations, and because you got your permit.
And Mr. Gore, I think to answer the question more specifically, the buffer zone to a vernal pool is, from a regulatory standpoint, has the same set of restrictions as the buffer zone to a BVW. The buffer zone itself does not become a resource area in Southborough. I know there are other communities that Hopkins springs to mind that put more stringent controls, but not in Southborough.
Okay, great, thank you.
But in terms of alteration of it, there are more regulations associated with it. Correct?
If they were, yeah, if they were to work within the pool itself,
Yes.
you know, but again, I
Like-
think our local bylaws would already be in effect too, so
Whether
it's
it's
kind of,
certified or not. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Do you have-
the point that I was just trying to make is if the pool becomes certified, it does not create an additional burden on anybody who's seeking to develop in some way their land here in Southborough. The certification
Especially,
doesn't,
yeah, especially in this circumstance as it's within an existing BVW too.
Yes, yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, anyone from the public wishing to ask any questions or provide comments on this particular project?
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay. Ben, since I wasn't here last meeting for this, is there anything that's left outstanding?
this may have already been resolved. There was an issue with an abutters list. You know, an abutters list is good for 6 months. And this abutters list, when used for the project, was like 6.5 months or 7 months, just over the deadline. So we just wanted to ask the applicant to get a new list of abutters from the assessors, just to verify that the list they use caused all the appropriate people to be notified.
I already did.
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. I already stated that I did that, and I forgot to include it in the attachment for the original follow-up, but I sent it to Melissa this afternoon.
That's what I was getting at. The actual list hadn't been submitted. I didn't realize that that you had.
Yeah.
And Melissa, we're good to go there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was the big outstanding issue, and the other requests that we made, looking into the vernal pool status and some additional information on the trees has been provided.
Okay, so we are in a position to close?
Yes, I believe we are.
Okay. So given that, do I hear a motion?
I'll move to close the meeting, close the hearing.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton. Sorry, Melinda, I didn't hear you. Upton.
Yes, I was having a hard time unmuting.
I'm sorry. Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, we usually just do the issuance at the very end, so I'll also have this for you tomorrow morning.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Okay, next, we have notice of intent. 20 and 22 Turnpike Road, map 39, lots 28, 29, and 32. Restoration of buffer zone activities outside the allowed limit of work for self-storage and golf range facilities. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Southborough Conservation, the Southborough Chapter 1, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, May 30th, 2024 at 7:40 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider 2 notice of intent for projects located at 20 Turnpike Road, map 39, lot 28, and 22 Turnpike Road, map 39, lot 29 and 32. For the applicant PLB LLC, the project description is restoration of buffer zone activities that exceeded the originally approved work for limits for construction of self-storage and golf range facility respectively. These hearings are held concurrently.
Good evening. Peter Beam is here on behalf of PLB.
Hi, Peter.
Mark, so you weren't at the last meeting, but we did make a presentation and did outline the project limits. I did provide Melissa with some supplemental information where we shut off all of the approved project limits, and just so that brought focus to the proposed work areas. But you still have the ability to contrast the what was built and what was proposed and approved originally. And then we did do an overall exhibit showing the mitigation areas and the impact limits that went, I would call it, beyond what was originally approved, and provided the square footages for those areas, and then identified the mitigation that's proposed within each area. I don't have the ability to bring up any exhibits right now. My son has done something with our network tonight, and all of a sudden I got a bunch of red X's and I can't get into anything. But I can see you, and I can use my little laptop here. So if Melissa, if you could share, and if not, then I've given you the description.
Do you want any one specific, or just the newer site plans?
I think the newer site plan probably would help, and then I can just talk about those areas then. Thank you, Melissa. So with this, we started with the sheet 1 of 3, which was the middle of the site. We did do things on the either end, but from the front end at Turnpike Road, there's really no impacts. There's no wetlands there, but there is a detention basin, and that area is still seen on the top half of this sheet. The detention basin needs to be maintained. It hasn't been, and all of the sediments will be removed from it, and the area restored. The contributing to the sediments was the area up above, which is the right part of this sheet. That hillside would be restored. That proposal is still going forward, and you can see that with the note that's there. As we wrap through the self-storage area, there's a mitigation area that's kind of in the central portion just above the title block that says Town Line Rentals there. They had pushed into an area that didn't have an allowed use limit, so that's being restored. That area in general was 4,660 square feet of affected area that's basically going to be restored again. The next area is kind of at the lower part of the right of the sheet here, and it goes on to the next sheet. So I'm going to come back to that when we go to the back sheet, because you'll see it better there. Connecting the area that I had just described with a cart path was going through the middle of the site there. That's what those in the middle of the drawing, we're identifying 3 areas that have to be restored. One is associated with a pitch and putt that they have there. There's a sand trap. That sand trap has eroded over time into the resource area. All of the sediments that have washed into that area would have to be removed by hand. And the final restoration would be plantings along that edge with a stump grinding berm, if you will, to prevent future sediment from going into that area. The original approved limits for this zone was right up to the 20-foot no-touch line. There were some small pockets where they went into the 20-foot no-touch or hovered along the edge of what the work limit was. And so those areas totaled 1,180 in one pocket. Another pocket was 400 square feet, and the final pocket that's up by the parking lot was 560 square feet. Again, all these limits will be restored with plantings. If I could go to sheet 2 of 3, Melissa, please. So to kind of rotate back, if we come from that parking lot then and just kind of rotate back, that cart path that I was describing to you that connected to that zone where they had pushed in off of the self-storage area, that area is going to be blocked off. There'll be maple trees planted at either end and some barriers to prevent any future traffic from going in there. And saplings have already started to establish in the cart path because it hasn't been used now for some time. I think Mother will heal herself just well through the middle of that, and to put some other plantings just doesn't make a lot of sense. As we rotate from there and come down to the lower part of the sheet, that's where there's a connection from the driving range to a maintenance building that they've constructed. And what we found with that was that they could have permitted this access point through land that was all outside of the buffer zone. Excuse me, the 20-foot no-touch buffer zone. But it would have caused removal of ledge, and it would have caused removal of very large trees. So we felt as though it was best to keep the cart path where it was, but to formalize it in a manner that it wouldn't allow any attrition into the 20-foot buffer zone any further, and then to stabilize its surface with a crushed stone. And then when they got into the zone where the maintenance building is, they would put some boulders along the edge to prevent any further push into the buffer zone along that edge. And whatever's been altered now would stay altered, and no additional alteration would occur in that area. The building itself would stay where it is, and we would do plantings along the edge of the building as well. And then as we come back towards the self-storage facility at the top right part of the sheet, again, there was an area where they went into the buffer, and that would all be restored with plantings and, again, permanent boulder protection so that there'd be no further advancement into that area. This whole zone from cart path to self-storage facility was 15,270 square feet. That was the largest area that was impacted. The last area, I think you might have to pan a little bit, Melissa, to the, it's actually, you know what, you have to go to sheet one of, I'm sorry, the last sheet, pardon me, the last sheet. There's two splice zones. So basically we're going down to the whole back of the site. There's an isolated wetland that was located at the southwestern corner of the lot. They had constructed a golf simulation building that it's basically a large shed or a large shed, small garage. And that went into the 100-foot edge of the 100-foot buffer. And again, we thought the best thing to do there was to put signage so that there be no further advancement to that area. And then on the right view, it just gives you the complete view down to Turnpike Road, and it shows that the detention basin will be maintained. Also at the last meeting, Bob Ackley, who lives on Brook Lane, had made commentary about stormwater. He thought perceived stormwater coming from this site affecting his property adversely. I did walk the Old Town Road and didn't find anything extraordinary particularly coming from our site there. Most of the water that would leave this area, the watershed goes to the Chinese church property. I didn't really find anything that I would attribute coming down onto Bob's property itself, but I had no problem if I needed to go to his home and look at something. I'd be grateful to do that to help him out. And I thought there was one other thing that came up. You had asked for the exhibit for the impacted, the last impacted area here in the southwest at the practice building there is 4,380 square feet. So 4,380 square feet. And we weren't proposing any plantings back there. Again, it didn't make much sense from our perspective. That's where we are. We have a DEP file number for both proposals, and we obviously would like to get the work advanced when we can, but once you folks are comfortable with this, I realized we had an order of conditions that was 20 plus years old and expired. So that's what we're dealing with. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, I was going to ask if we had DEP numbers.
Yeah, we do.
So that's good. Okay. All right. Any questions? Commentary from the commission members?
Peter, we discussed this a little bit before. Oh yeah. So there have been some changes in alignment and so forth in the roadways, and consequently with the drainage system itself. It looks like the detention pond may be sort of similar in scale, but a little bit differently shaped. Have you gone through and modeled the changes in HydroCAD just to verify that, with the, I don't know how closely the inverts, for example, match the design, and drainage areas, how much they've shifted, but have you verified that the drainage system as constructed is going to mitigate peak flows and so forth?
Right. So the problem I have is that if I use the sediment load that's in the basin now, that would affect the calculation.
Oh,
There's
indeed.
that
Yeah.
much sediment in it. Yes. There's
Yeah.
there's a good 2 feet of sediment in it. So I don't really have a good gauge for the as-built elevation in the basin at the moment. And that's the quandary I find myself in, because too much time has gone by. We didn't do an as-built like after it was built.
Right.
My gut tells me it's okay, but I know you would ask for that, Ben, and I thought, I don't know how to really do that calculation without a proper as-built of the basin, and until he dredges it, I can't do it. I had hoped that they would undertake the work. Paul was away. I know he's back, and he does plan on doing the work. So I have no problem with giving you that detail, but I would be able to do so properly after it was dredged.
Okay, yeah, because I recall it, I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, but you had anticipated that dredging would start up. You had hoped it would start up soon.
Yeah.
I
just wanted to get it done while the growing season was upon us, and that the plants wouldn't be stressed through the summer. So
that's my outstanding concern.
Okay.
And if I understand correctly, the dredging of that can start at any time. It doesn't require an NOI.
It's outside of the buffer zone, and it could. And I had mentioned that during the proceedings. I would have no problem if the commission was inclined to want to support the project and make that a condition. I mean, if this is an order of conditions, it is outside the buffer zone, but I would have no problem with that being a condition of approval, is to ensure that the capacity of the basin meets the requirements that were of its original design intent. That would be fine, because we would want that anyways.
Of course, my concern extends a little beyond just insofar as I know the there've been some changes in changes in what was originally proposed for ground cover. I think some of the grading is a little bit different, and the concern is if we miss a change that alters the drainage enough that we're not mitigating peak flows or so forth, that's an important part of our responsibility. We have to make sure that that's taken care of.
Okay. What we could do is I suppose we could route through what we, I guess, could say we have for an as-built condition of the basin now, is one way of looking at it, and see what needs to be done to it, if you will, if anything.
Absolutely. And frankly, if the numbers work with the basin as is, then we know they'll work.
Yeah. I just don't know the answer to that right now, and I don't want to mislead you in any way. So we could do that, and we could base it upon what we have for the as-built conditions of the pavement limits and the routing through those areas.
And then, as you say, that might give some guidance into the depth of dredging needed to get the basin in good shape.
Okay. So we could deliver that to you in advance of the next meeting, for sure.
That's all I have, Mark.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mark, I do have a question, if I may, more for the commission as a whole. We haven't sent this to Lucas Environmental as of yet. The plans in the submittal wasn't quite there, so we didn't want to, send it to Joe to have this long list of things for Peter to do. At what point and what information would you like to see submitted so that we can get Joe out there? You know, and if this might be a site as well, Peter, if I have talked, maybe commissioners want to go out and look at it, you know, because there is kind of some odds and ends things that just for what the property is, you know, was kind of a shared property, so you can kind of look at it from that way. I guess I want to know what the commission is looking for so that we can get kind of some more forward progress on the application.
Well, are you saying or suggesting that the application is not complete?
It was, you know, complete in the sense, I think the actions, we had a little bit of discussion at the last meeting in terms of what some of the restoration actions would be. You know, Peter and it's a lot easier to kind of see what is worth or valid for the restoration and when you're on site. This property is a little bit harder, you know, and some of it is like that, you know, trail or cart path that you know, ironically, the one that should leave is better, even though it's closer to the resource area. I think I want commissioners to be comfortable with that aspect as well, because there are some, you know, in my opinion, site limiting factors that we should take into consideration, like vegetation that has grown in. But I think there was just a lot of unknown at the time of what was kind of originally approved, what was there, and what the total scope of what you wanted Joe to look at, and kind of to determine if the mitigation was sufficient.
So if I understand what you're saying, basically since the project was built, it's been some number of years, right? The site has matured. Going in and, you know, maybe tearing things up to meet the original design may not be the right thing to do because the number of years have passed and things have grown as such, and it's kind of morphed itself. So there may be some things that need to be done versus those things that may not want to be done. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Based on the conditions that are out there now. For example, the cart path is where it is, but if it was to be put where it was originally designed, you'd be cutting down big trees for what purpose?
Right.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, if the commission is good with the plan that we had just shown, you know, just kind of the general areas and general, you know, proposals for mitigation, we can have, you know, have Joe take a look at that and, you know, do the site and kind of take a little more in depth. I think some of it is more on the stormwater side of things versus just kind of, you know, areas of mitigation. There was a lot kind of between the two properties, I think, to make sure that the commission's on the same page and understanding what the encroachments are and what the mitigation is to rectify specific encroachments. Either
Yeah,
in
sure. So
totality or individually.
Yeah, I'd love to walk the site if you're going to be going out there at some point, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, include me as well if you could.
Yeah,
And if I'm available, I'd love to come too.
sure.
we just have to be careful that if we reach a quorum, we have to post it
Or no talking.
Well,
or that, right? We gotta be careful of public meeting laws.
figure out how many people we can have there.
Yeah, there is a quorum, but there's, you know, if more people want to go, we'll figure it out. We'll make sure we're good. So
Okay.
is it more sounding like at least in the meantime, we want to start to get Joe out there, submit the documents we have to date and start to get a little bit more supplemental feedback?
Peter, this isn't a new wetland delineation, right? This is the one that was, yeah. Have the flags been reestablished out there or are they visible?
No,
Okay.
No, but the resource, that's why we tried to do this the way we did it, is to do this as an overlay so that you'd have a better sense of where everything was. And we did put the flag numbers there. We could do that. I would say that, as I said to Melissa, I'd rather give back more to what the project looks like when we're done and be happy with that than to try to recreate that wheel. You know, the wheel's pretty old at this point, and I was trying not to do this in too much of an ad hoc fashion as well. We were trying to obligate them to certain details, and I walked it with Melissa before we even got this far, just because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't saying anything that didn't make sense to her to start with. And I had actually said to Melissa, can Joe get out there, because I would like him to put his 2 cents into this, so that we can just try to find a way to get to where we need to be. And he'd have a better sense of the wetlands as they stand today, and I'd be comfortable with that. You know, he's got the aptitude for that more so than us.
Yeah, so the commission has to sort of find a way, I think, through this. So if the line's more than 3 years old,
Oh yeah.
you know, and it certainly is. You know, does the commission want to, and can the commission navigate a path where we're not confirming a wetland line? Maybe Joe, out in the field with the plans, feels comfortable that the lines are representative of what's still on the ground. Maybe there's a path forward through that, but I'm not sure how we would best handle that.
Well, so recall, so we did put in, the way this project started was that we had an order of conditions that had expired. We put in a request for certificates of compliance, knowing that we had these deviations, and we brought that to your attention ahead of time. I've had other communities that come back and say, well, we'll give you an enforcement order to make the corrections. In this instance, we said, no, we'll just file a new notice. I mean, that made the most sense. It was to get permission to do the work. And Melissa felt the same way. Let's have permission to get the work. We are not asking for a wetland delineation through this. We've not asked for that. I think actually our cover letter stated that wasn't our intent. Our intent is strictly to mitigate and replicate what needs to be done, and that's it. And any new work, any new activity out there would require a totally new separate notice of intent. This is strictly an application for restoration only. So that I can guarantee is what we asked for and what we expect to get back. And I would ask you to limit your order so that you aren't certifying anything to do with the resource areas, other than the improvements that we expect to make.
Okay. So it probably does make sense that Joe goes out there and takes a look at what's being proposed for restoration.
Okay.
And I think, Peter, it'd also be good to run the calculations based on the condition of the basin now.
Yep, we can do that.
Maybe maybe it meets the requirements, not having it dredged, but it'd be good to know how much buffer we have.
Okay. And so if there is going to be a site visit, I'd just like to be able to be present, or I'd have my son participate. So
Yes, you will be our group leader, Peter.
yeah, one of us will be a group leader. Yeah, if the commission wants to go out, I'd be happy to do that. It's just weekends are challenging now, having a grandchild and making it with my responsibility to help mind him. But I am enjoying that. So
I'll figure out a time in the next 2 weeks or so, between commissioners and us to do it. So I'll reach out.
Yeah, if we could just try to, I'd like to try to get this wrapped up at the next meeting. So I will make sure I have my calculations to you in advance. Ben, I'll make sure that you have the ability to review those. And the same thing with Joe, if we could get out there just in case there is some commentary, we could get some design plans back.
Okay, and there's just that the commission is all in agreement, there's nothing that's preventing anything to get started on the restoration of the stormwater basin. Right, that can go ahead.
I think so.
Okay. All right, good.
So I'll ask
and-
for a continuance.
And I think that also includes the restoration of the bank associated with the stormwater basin, as you mentioned earlier, Peter.
Yes. It's everything's outside the buffer there.
Okay. All right. Okay, so you're looking for continuance. Let me just ask if there's anybody from the public that wants to ask any questions or provide any commentary.
Was a hand, but it went down. There it is. Okay.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
So hearing none, then we'll go ahead and,
Oh, there is, sorry, there
what?
is one hand.
Oh.
Need to keep back up.
Yeah,
Bob, you should
Bob
be able
Ackley
to-
here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter, you walk behind my house?
Yep, just not right to your property, Bob, but generally down that side. Yes, sir. And I did not
Yeah,
see
well-
anything that bad coming from our property.
Right. Well, since the property's been built, every heavy rain, I get a flood down the road. And it goes all the way down to the catch basin behind Forest Side. And I've been trying to grow trees there for 20 years. And I keep getting flooded out down there. And there was also a row of trees behind the driving range building that was taken out by the applicant that was supposed to be there for screening for me. Is that part of conservation?
Probably outside the buffer zone, but Bob, because we're going to continue this, I'll make myself available to see these things firsthand. That you're
Well, it's
bringing it up.
I've been trying to screen the driving range for 20 years, and PLB took out all the trees behind the driving range itself, behind the building. But anyway, another concern I have is you say there's 2 feet of sediment in the retention pond that's
Yeah,
up there.
yep.
So, I've complained about that before as being basically an illegal snow dump. I brought it to conservation and it kind of got poo-pooed by conservation. That
Wow.
snow was brought in by hundreds of trucks a night, all over the place. They were emptying out the Natick Mall and parking lots all over the state with dumping snow in there. So what is the 2 feet of sediment? Has that ever been tested? Is that, what went in there?
Yeah, I don't know the history. I do know that they were dumping snow there. I'm not going to say that they weren't. I know that happened. But at the same time, any sediments that are in that basin, they'll be properly disposed of, and that's all I can say. Whatever
Well, this is-
transgressions happened in the past, I can just say that I don't see that they're going to be going forward the same way. That much I can tell you.
So
All right.
I can tell you one thing though, that the Conservation Commission did not poo-poo this, as you stated. It went all the way to DEP, and DEP came back and said there was no violation. So it was not just handled by the local town Conservation Commission. It actually went to DEP, and we got a ruling back from them as well. So, and there was no violation.
Well, what's going on now?
With what?
I mean, it's not on any plan or anything. We got a snow dump in there. It's not permitted in there. So anyway, aside of that, there's also a trash company operating up there. So you have trash trucks coming in and out of there, very close to that resource area. Is that supposed to be monitored? Is there anything going on with that?
I have no knowledge of the businesses that are up there on the self-storage facility, so I don't know what businesses are there.
Well, if there's vehicles parked within the buffer zone, isn't that part of conservation? Or, heavy industrial trucks?
well, if there are vehicles, parked within buffer zones, there's, consideration, or not consideration, but there's concerns about, leaking hydraulics, leaking fuel, leaking oil, and those sorts of things, certainly. But, I know of no violations of such up there.
Yeah, and a fair amount of the self-storage area is outside the buffer. I will say to you, there are some sections that are in it. I don't know where these vehicles are that you're mentioning, but they can certainly do a little bit more due diligence on their part on the self-storage facility, and I'll bring it to the owner's attention. The
Are
concerns.
there any considerations for cleaning of the golf course equipment? Is there a cleaning area?
I'm not aware of one.
For what, grass clippings, or what are you referring to?
Yeah, all the equipment. All the equipment that's used in golf courses, typically, like at Marlboro Country Club, where my dad was superintendent, or Juniper Hill, they would have to go through, a whole process of where they clean their equipment, all the mowers and all that stuff. So do they have that up there as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure they have the same sophisticated systems they might have at a country club. I mean, they've got obviously a driving range, so there's an open area that they mow. But I will
Right.
say that having walked these limits, there weren't any grass clippings in the wetlands that we typically find on a residential project. There's none of that. So, there were a few other transgressions for sure, but that was not one of them. And that might have been the first thing I might have suspected we'd find here, but we didn't. So I'd say that they're probably doing that part of their maintenance the right way.
Well, Pete, it's about where they're doing equipment maintenance. It's not about necessarily where they're throwing the clippings. It's about where you hose down your equipment, where you're doing any maintenance on your equipment. That's all I'm asking about.
Yeah,
That was typically a problem at most of the courses, when the environmental regs came in. So yeah, the driving range is the driving range, a little bit smaller, but they got the same type of equipment. So they would have the same type of requirements, wouldn't they?
Yeah, to some extent, I'm sure. I don't even know if I haven't seen a mower there, so I'm not even sure if they hired someone to come in and do the mowing or not. But it's a good question you're asking, and I'll see if I can get an answer for it.
Well, anyway, thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. We do get flooded down here now when we never got flooded before since the driving range came in, and they basically moved the old airstrip about 50 feet to get that extra feet, and all the rain that comes down, and the heavy rains comes down the old road, down the old Bay Path, and floods all the trees that I've been trying to plant for keep growing for 20 years to buffer out this place. So anyway, anything you can do for me, great. I wish the new driving range owner luck, and I support the driving range and the storage facility, but the other things they were doing with the storage facility, the snow dumping, was really ridiculous, and I wish it didn't happen. But anyway, thanks a lot, you guys. Have a great night.
You as well. Pardon me. Got a cold. All right. Anything else from anybody else? No? Okay. So this will be continued. Peter, you've got some tasks ahead of you.
I do. And just follow up on the timing for site inspections. I can do that with Melissa. So thank you.
Coordinate that through Melissa for sure.
All right. Good night.
All right. Do I hear a motion to continue the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Zulik. All right, we'll just pass on that. Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Now on to new and or continued business. Do we have the trustees here?
Yes. Did you want to do the continuance for 120 first? or do the trustees?
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that one. Yeah. Yeah, we'll do the continuance.
I will load the trustees in the meantime.
All right, so this is a notice of intent for 120 Turnpike Road, map 37, lot 120-4. Construction of a 60-unit apartment building. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, May 30th, 2024 at 7:50 p.m. By a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider notice of intent for a project located 120 Turnpike Road, map 37, lot 120-4. The applicant FD 120 Turnpike LLC. The project description is construction of a 60-unit apartment building. Okay, we officially opened the continuation, and they are asking for another continuance for date and time. Melissa?
Yes, till 6:20 at our next meeting. They have asked it for a continuance because they are revising their plans to be in accordance with the 6.2 acre land donation. So they plan to have that for us for the next meeting because they are getting that for ZBA.
Okay. All right, so do I hear a motion to for request for continuance?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmetto.
Yes. Okay, now we can have the trustees in. Chestnut Hill Farm discussion.
I think we have DA Hayden and Mike Francis here. Should be able to unmute.
Melissa, we also have Julie Richburg and Alejandro Bambila.
Got it. All right, they're loading in.
Great. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us again this evening. We're here to talk about the management plan, but I also thought maybe I should give a quick couple of updates and introductions the way I usually do so that you have a sense of things that are happening. Does that work for you, Mark?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so Julie Richburg, PhD, inland lead ecologist is with us. Julie, as you know, is responsible for the overall pasture management, the woodland plans, all of the things that you've read about in the management plan. And she also authored the woodland plan that's already in the overall management plan. Alejandro is with us. He is also a PhD agroecologist. Alejandro was not with us at the last meeting, but it's Alejandro's responsibility. He's been working a lot on all of the, the bobolinks, the nesting bird habitat, all of the hedgerows, the native plantings, and the seed saving program that we're doing. Mike Francis, our senior regional stewardship manager, is also on the call. Mike has been involved with the cover cropping work that we just finished doing there and has spent a lot of time on the trails with our trail specialists, kind of continuing that conversation that we had at the last meeting. Mike and his team have identified some opportunities for enhanced wayfinding signage, and that has all been ordered. And we'd also like to invite the commissioners who are interested to come out to the farm and take a look at the Overlook Trail area that we've talked about a couple of times, because there is a Mike has and our trail specialists have a way to reroute that we think is going to work well, both for access to the public while ensuring the privacy of our neighbors. So I just wanted to kind of give you the updates on those things. But tonight's focus really is to approve the management plan. We are ready to go. We have added the paragraph that you all requested at the last meeting, just with a quick update on the pause that we're taking on farming this year. And that's all been built into the plan. Now it's in the farm plan section of the management plan, preceding the first paragraph. And that's where we are. So anything else that I can answer, I'm happy to do so. If you haven't had a chance to read that paragraph, I have it and I can read it out loud if that's helpful to anyone. Ben, you're nodding.
Ben, you're on mute.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
thank
want me to go ahead and do that? All right,
That
just
would be
give me
great.
a minute. Give me a second here to pull it up. One second here, I've got to find the page. This management plan is very long. Okay, here we go. So it's the section that is called agriculture. And the first paragraph now reads, in 2024, the trustees looked at its agriculture operations across the state and made the decision to pause farming operations at Chestnut Hill Farm to provide time to develop a sustainable model for the property. Operations were adapted to prioritize passive recreation, maintaining trails, and focusing on bobolink nesting bird habitat, as well as multiple agroecology projects, including pollinator hedgerows and native plant seed saving initiatives, among others, and in accordance with the CR. The farm's agricultural resources will be stewarded with seasonal pasture mowing and cover crops to provide nutrients to the soils, which is important for future vegetable farming and upholding the purposes of the CR. The trustees will update the Conservation Commission as future plans are developed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, the only question I have with that is the seasonal mowing of agricultural areas, just specifically with respect to the fields that historically have supported bobolinks. I'd just be curious of just a little more detail in that. I mean, I know the hope is certainly my hope, and I think other commissioners have voiced the same hope that the mowing can be pushed back late enough into the year that there will be no concern with interfering with the bobolink nesting behavior. So seasonal mowing, I don't quite know what that means. You know what I mean? Like, are we actually going to be pushing it back to, you know, mid-August or something, so that the bobolinks have plenty of time to fledge their young and do their thing? Or
Yes, well, there's a whole section on the mowing that addresses what you're talking about, but I can also ask Alejandro if he would like to kind of expand on that. And Julie, any support you can provide to that would be great too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as we say in the plan already, we're managing that main field, the bobolink field, for bobolinks and other grassland breeding birds. So that includes bobolinks and savanna sparrows as well. And so we certainly wouldn't be mowing before they're done nesting. This year, while we have a pause, we probably have the opportunity to mow, like you're saying, Ben, even later than we would as outlined in the plan. So it'll probably get pushed back, you know, well into August, if not even later than that.
that would certainly be the hope to, you know, there's an issue where the population on this property suffered a decline, and if this pause can help to bring them back to the site, I think that's fantastic.
I think we're very hopeful of that, and that is the plan. And as we've mentioned before, any time that anyone would like to go out, anyone on the commission would like to go out and walk with Alejandro and see what's happening in that nesting area, we are more than happy to do that.
That's a wonderful opportunity, and I think many of us, speaking for myself, I'd love to take advantage of that option. That sounds terrific, and I think we'd all learn from Alejandro's expertise. This is an area I hear about frequently in town. What's happening with the bobolinks? Why have they declined so much? Does it have to do with the trail placement? What are we doing with mowing, and how are we ensuring that we are doing everything to safeguard the habitat for those important birds? So I think that's great to hear that there's some flexibility in the schedule to try to optimize the success of the bird population.
Yeah,
I did have,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, if you want to comment on that piece.
No,
that's
I was
fine.
just going to say we're in complete agreement with you, and maybe Melissa, is that something that we can just schedule through you to have little visits out there? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I did have a brief opportunity this afternoon when the email came out to look at the words in the paragraph, and I have to say it's embedded in the agriculture section. And we get a lot of questions in town about the intent or not to resume farming at the sites. Most of that section is very specific about the kinds of farming activity that are going to be occurring there. And as we think about this plan, I would just ask, are there sections of that plan that we think probably will not continue? There's reference to livestock, and we heard that you were consolidating all the goats up on the North Shore. So as we think about, the responsibilities we all carry to, think about the conservation restriction, the intent, the use of the land, I just would ask the question as you're thinking about the future, are there elements of the agriculture plan that you think would never be resumed?
We are definitely not in the position to answer that right now, simply because we are looking at everything and really trying to figure out what the next steps will be. Our hope as an organization is to continue farming there. Now, how that will manifest, it's way too early for us to know. The reason there is so much detail in there is because we have been working on this plan for several years now, and we kept adding to it with requests from the commissioners and with the work that we were doing. So we're in this funky place now where the plan was written, and then we had a delay waiting for some other folks to look at it. And then the trustees in the meantime made this decision to take the pause. So I understand what you're saying. It feels a little awkward, but we're not in a position right now to say exactly what's going to be happening there.
And is there any indication or sense, because I've been asked this question as well from people in town, of when you think there could be greater clarity? Is there a time frame for figuring out the plans for resuming farming or not?
What I can say is that we are on an April 1 fiscal year. So, and timing for farming, you usually start your planning and hiring and recruiting and all of that in the fall and early winter at the latest, because that's when you start to do your planning. So I can give you that sort of guidance. I can't, we can't say on X date we'll have a plan for you. What we can say is the minute we do have a plan, you'll be the first people to hear about it.
So since your fiscal year starts April 1, and you'd have to ramp up staffing in the fall to be prepared for next spring growing season, is it fair to say that farming will not happen next year for sure?
Mark, I don't know. I really don't know. Our hopes are that the farming will continue, but I can't commit to a date or anything like that at this point. We're really of evaluating everything, and as soon as we have a plan, we will let you know.
Yeah, my question was coming, since your fiscal year starts April 1st, you have your budget for this year through April 1st of 2025, I would think.
Right.
And if you don't have budget plan now to hire to support farming next year that you would have to hire in the fall, then you probably aren't going to be in a position to do that.
That's not what I was saying.
Okay.
So we go through a budgeting process in the organization. What I was saying is that in the fall is when you start thinking about planning for the next year. and recruiting for the next year. So I don't have an answer for you on that, and the organization doesn't have an answer. Our intent is to maintain that property so that it's as fine as it can be, and our hope is to continue to farm there. How that will be manifested is something that we just don't know at this point.
Okay. Thanks for the clarity. Other questions?
Yeah, so Melissa, this is a question for Melissa. Was it at our last meeting, we talked about reaching out to town council just to get a couple of questions answered? Have you been able to make any headway?
No, so the last meeting we discussed what if we wanted to, and then we were going to kind of further par down any potential questions. So we didn't submit any legal requests at this time.
Okay. I recall that you had put together an initial list of suggested questions for the commission.
Yeah, it's kind of the things that we have discussed in past, and things I've talked to DA about, in terms of, I think it's really dependent on what the use is. So the buildings, the break in the stone wall, the small things that, appear to be contingent upon the use of it as agriculture. So if we get to a point where, agriculture or animal husbandry isn't being enacted on the farm, and the commission has a concern of compliance with the CR, then definitely we can go about it that way in terms of town council. I guess it depends on the way that the commission takes in terms of the pause. If I think there's just so unknown from starting at the top of the trustees of where this is going. The conversations Dee and I have had, especially in the last 2 weeks, have just been trying to figure out what we could possibly draft that would be acceptable for the majority of the parties, just based on so many unknowns, so many contingencies, and recognizing that yes, there are things that are contingent upon farming, but if the intent is still there, we don't necessarily want to take away all of the approvals per se. You don't want to start ripping down buildings or fencing if next year, or even in 2, 3, 4 years, the farming will be coming back, because the cost of re-implementing existing infrastructure would be burdensome. But I guess it remains with the commission and the trustees on this intermediary period of until we know where we're going. Is the management plan has kind of the inclusiveness, that was the management plan. If we had kind of approved it or gotten more progress when it was initially submitted, this would have been what's in existence now. So if this is inclusive of all the things that they still want to do, is the commission okay with having this as the management plan now, with the understanding that, things could change, but at least we have an updated management plan on the books? Or is there, additional specifics that are needed, in terms of the grassland birds have come up a lot in terms of the bobolinks, and sometimes I think we're just been caught for so long. And I think what DA said is a lot of this seems kind of choppy now because there's this big change, but a lot of the management aspects and contents, is stuff that we've discussed previously as a working farm. So it's that very tricky fine line of, I guess, how we want to determine, and if just that statement and, something that we can get a new management plan on the books updated, if there's something supplemental that needs to come once the trustees understand what is happening on the farm, I think that is definitely a conversation that will happen regardless once the plan is known.
Thank you. I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess the one change that I would like to see, and it sounds like this isn't a burdensome thing, but the areas being managed for grassland bird habitat, during the period of no farming, you know, in that paragraph where you address this period, I would like to say that the grassland bird habitat, you know, will not be mowed until April 15th or something like that. So this is something of great interest in the community, is getting the bobolinks reestablished in the property. And I think we can look at this as the one bright side to this is there's an opportunity to do that here, it sounds like. And from what we heard from Julie a little bit earlier, it sounds like that may in fact even be your plan. You know,
Ben, do you mean August 15th?
I'm sorry, did I say the wrong month? I meant to say
April.
August.
Yeah, August.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think
August. Yeah.
I think we're absolutely fine saying that.
Okay, great. And then I do notice that somebody has had their hand up in the public for now a couple of people. There's a Mr. Carter who had his hand raised for several minutes.
I think it might have been for another hearing for 120 that was continued. Do you want me to quickly just check?
Sure, yeah, and then of course Freddie has raised her hand as well.
All right, Mr. Carter, you should be able to unmute. If you had comments about 120 Turnpike, we continued without comment just because we you know, are getting completely new plans. But if you have a comment about this, you're more than welcome to unmute. If not, I'll probably put your hand down. Okay. All right. So I'm going to put Paul's hand down. Feel free to raise it again, but otherwise I'll let Freddie in.
Hi there, everyone. This is Freddie Gillespie. I'm chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. And I had one comment about the bobolink habitat. Everyone's talking about not mowing, but the real issue that caused the departure of the nesting bobolinks, my understanding is, occurred with grazing in the habitat. And I believe although I've been told that there won't be any grazing, I'm not sure for how long when you restart farming, if that's continued. The management plan still retains your right to allow grazing within the bobolink habitat during nesting periods based on some research done elsewhere. And I would like to state once again, for over a year now, the objection to that from the Open Space Preservation Commission and many other people. Whit Beals had been adamantly against it before he passed away. The past history was over. He was reported to say there were 36 nesting pairs. I have a birder friend who just off the top of her head said, oh, always 24 or more. And I think you're doing some monitoring and came up with was it 3 guaranteed and probably a few more nesting. And I would say until you bring it back to the 36, there should be no grazing in there during the nesting period. So that was just one issue that I think is still outstanding in the management plan. You know, we've been commenting on that numerous times for over a year now and even met and discussed it at the barn with Whit. Ben was there and so was Kevin. So Melissa as well. So I really think that because you don't know what kind of farming you're going to bring back and you don't know when you're going to start farming. And I think at the very least, you need to guarantee that you restore it to the pre-existing success that was there before the grazing incidents happened. So that was one point. And then I don't know if you want me to bring up another proactive point that I've been asked and the Open Space Preservation Commission met and discussed. We were asked by a selectman, what are we doing to help the trustees bring farming back now? And my opinion that I shared with our commission when we talked about it is that farming is an allowed use and it's not a required use in the conservation restriction. And that is totally up to the fee holder to determine what they are doing, whether they're farming or not. you know, it's not, some people think like you have to farm there. And, you know, that was the intention certainly, and what everyone loved about the trustees' management of the property, but there's no obligation. Having said that, the question is there anything the town of Southborough can do to help bring farming back within the legitimate requirements of the conservation, not legitimate, legal requirements of the conservation restriction that would be seen as proactive, partnership, collaboration? A few things that have been mentioned to me that people would like to see some kind of farming to occur even during this downtime from the trustees. And how are you going to manage the openness of the fields? And once you lose the field being managed, then it's harder to bring farming back, has been brought up. A couple of things had been discussed, which I'm just going to say, which I have no opinion on or belief that it's even something within your purview, because I'm sure you would have thought of it if it was doable, but we just would like to share the support people have for you continuing farming there. And some of the things was some sort of community garden, not even a community gardens, but where they, you know, volunteers help you farm. There's an operation on Pine Hill Road where volunteers have been working and providing hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of food to food pantries every season. Al Hamilton, our selectman, has been active in working on that. And there's also was suggested, can you lease the farm out to have somebody else farm it while you're not? I understand that's a whole nother legal situation, but just wanted to put out that there's other models that people are interested in asking if you have considered them. And secondly, also, is there anything the town of Southborough can proactively do to help bring farming back within the legal requirements of the conservation restriction? So thank you. So that's two questions, the bobolink situation and how we can help encourage or support the trustees in bringing farming back. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think maybe Alejandro can explain that last year there was no grazing during the until after July 15th, I believe, in that field, and obviously there won't be any grazing this year. What I think is important for everyone to realize, and Julie spoke to this at our last meeting, we can't guarantee that a certain number of bobolinks will be in these fields, and I think we all know that. Julie, perhaps you could just recap for us what you explained at the last meeting, and Alejandro, if you don't mind, also talking a little bit about the science behind this and the other elements that are affecting some of these ground nesting birds and what we're doing as an organization and specifically at Chestnut to try to bring you know, more birds to the property and to have them flourish.
Do you want to go first, Julie?
Sure. Just kind of a brief overview. You know, the trustees manage not just Chestnut Hill Farm for grassland breeding birds, but many properties across the state. And, you know, we're really interested and working very hard to maintain our grassland habitats to support grassland breeding birds. And that includes, you know, making sure that the species composition of the vegetation and the structure of these fields is supportive of these birds. And the field at the bobolink field at Chestnut Hill Farm is one of the best fields that we have within the state, according to, you know, our volunteers that are out there observing birds. And it's a small field, right? It's about 10 acres. But it's having, you know, proportionally a similar amount of bobolinks per acre to fields that are much larger. So the work that we're doing there is supporting bobolinks species populations fluctuate over time. And that is anticipated, but we have a really good solid grassland bird population there, and including savanna sparrows. And even last year we had consistent grasshopper sparrows showing up. Not sure that they're breeding there yet, but using the field.
Yeah, I was kind of going to speak along similar lines that the management that we have for the bobolink field at Chestnut Hill Farm is in line with our general management for grassland bird nesting habitat across other properties in fields that are really successful, successful as defined by nesting pairs per acre. I think I had given you that figure of 3 confirmed for sure last year, and they're back this year. What we had been working on with Whit was he had concerns around residual vegetation and the impact happening outside of the nesting season, which we had come up with a plan to kind of entertain that and investigate that with him. What if we leave certain areas of the field with less impact outside of the nesting season, to see if that could be a tool to recruit recruit more birds, have more birds nesting there. And we haven't had to implement that plan because that field actually hasn't been necessary to get on that field prior to the nesting season. And what was I also going to say about that? Oh, just as far as the historic numbers, following up on Julie's point that those fluctuate over time, that also could have very likely had been impacted by management throughout the rest of the property. We have this 1 10-acre field now that is managed principally for bobolinks, but there's more areas of open habitat on the property, and other areas that likely have grown up since then with woody vegetation. So I think it'll be interesting to see this year, particularly over on the other side of the road. Do we wind up seeing any bird activity outside of what's typically managed as bobolink habitat? So I'm optimistic that this will be a nice recruiting year for us there.
Thank you. And then Julie, would you mind just sharing what we're doing on the mowing and maintaining the fields? Freddie had a point about that, which we have addressed internally. And Freddie, I don't know whether you heard that we are also cover cropping at the property so that we're maintaining the nutrients in the soil for future vegetable farming.
Yeah, as we're taking this pause year, and what we had been doing, we are very cognizant about how to kind of have intermediate steps to make sure that we don't lose any ground. So, we are going to mow the fields to make sure that we're maintaining them. We did plant cover crops, and Alejandro can speak to that more. But those crop fields will be cover cropped and mown to maintain those fields. The bobolink field will get mowed to make sure that it doesn't start supporting woody vegetation. But, as we've said, that'll be much later than July 15th. We are going to either mow that ourselves or potentially have to contract somebody to come in and mow it for us. We're figuring that out right now, but it'll get mowed, by the fall, to maintain that habitat. And we do that mowing and management of our grassland bird fields at many, many fields across the state that don't have the kind of agriculture that Chestnut Hill Farm has had in the past and some of our other properties. So we know how to kind of keep these fields open for grassland bird habitat. And I'm confident that we'll be able to do that in this pause year as well.
Yeah, I would just like to highlight about the cover crops, if that's okay. Sorry,
Sure.
just you off. I think I just want to, you know, highlight that the fact that those fields have been put into cover crops is a really optimistic sign for getting veg production back there, because there are alternatives to that don't require as much maintenance and don't set up the fields for production in the short term as well. So what we put in is annual cover crops that, like Julie was mentioning, need to be mowed. The field will need to be reseeded. It'll need to have cover over winter. And that's a labor and cost intensive practice that we're doing. So say someone were to come in and want to be veg farming next year, they have fields that are in an appropriate condition for that. It could be seeded. It could have been seeded to perennial pasture grasses and say, okay, in 5 years, if somebody comes, we'll replow it back up. But they're still being managed as agricultural fields. Cover crop, the way that our veg farmers think about cover crops is cover crops are crops because you're feeding the soil to feed the next round of crops. So even though it may not look like traditional agricultural veg field management, to my mind, it still very much is this year. So pause is one way of looking at it, but not necessarily the way that I would look at it.
Thank you. And then Freddie, your last question was ideas for the future, and thank you for sharing those thoughts. Those are all things that are on the table that we're considering. And, you know, as I said earlier, as soon as we have a plan, we will be very happy to share it and to discuss it further with, you know, the folks here at the Conservation Commission. Al has reached out from the Select Board. So, you know, we're happy to share those plans as soon as we have them, but please know that all ideas are on the table at this point.
And I'll just interject to say, Freddie had asked if there's any way that the town can give support to encourage farming to return to the property. Are there any actions you feel the town can take to support that and encourage it? And
I think that we're quite aware of the interest in farming. Whatever happens there, I would wish in the future for that town support as well as the operation continues.
Freddie does still have her hand up. I think she put it back on. Is it okay to allow her to speak?
Sure.
Thank you. And that was a pretty good explanation. I just did want to share that there is support for the trustees, not just the farming. So that was the intent of saying, what can we do to help? If there is something that would be helpful to the trustees to bring the farming back at some point when you know what your plans are or you have thoughts, and just to share that as a positive comment during these difficult conversations. They're difficult on my end, and I can't imagine this is easy for the trustees or the conservation commissioners either. And I did just want to say about the bobolink habitat. You know, the concern is still there. You're saying 3 confirmed. I know that, you know, populations fluctuate, but we know that they went from dozens of breeding pairs, and then there was some type of grazing program within the habitat during breeding season, and then there were none. And now there's no grazing and a few have come back. And that was the point I was trying to make. And I'm not saying it has to be 3 dozen pair, but certainly more than 3 repairs would indicate it's okay to start grazing in there again when you bring grazing back, if you bring grazing back. And I appreciate the work that you're doing to keep the grasses in the right mixture and woody species out. I know that it's a lot of work. We try to do it with volunteer management at Breakneck Hill and Breakneck Hill Conservation Land. So my only point is that this is different than other properties you may own because the town of Southborough citizens voted to spend over $5 million for this conservation restriction. And one of the key components and what, we helped, push it over the line was the bobolink habitat was really important and felt personal to the residents of this town when was farming and wildlife habitat, the trails, and specifically the bobolinks. And so there's a certain level of affection beyond just wildlife habitat and species, which is what is written in the CR. But, it's a little bit different that's what we used as a key species to get people to spend their taxpayer dollars. And as an open space commissioner, I have to say it prevented us from purchasing other open space because we were committed to all of our available conservation land funding for CPA for 11 years. And we lost out on some other properties. So I feel specifically committed to making sure that what happened in the past with the grazing doesn't occur again. And that's what gives me the concern over the language that continues to stay in the management plan. So I don't need an answer to that. I've said it. I don't want to take up more time on it. So thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion for this evening?
I just want to again reiterate that really do look forward to the opportunity to learn from you directly on the site. I think it's great that you've invited us to come and spend time with you and get to know your team better as we understand the strategy behind the recommendations you've made, and really appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. And we are appreciative of our partnership with the Conservation Commission as well. Could we perhaps outline next steps so that we can try to get a management plan signed and put away? Ben, we'd be happy to add the August 15th date if that that paragraph.
Yeah, I would
Makes
really
you comfortable?
Yep.
That's fine. We can do that. Is there anything else?
And I think it does already state in the plan that your studies at other properties will be submitted or be presented to the Concom first before being enacted at Breakneck Hill.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
just want to make that, I double checked that as well.
Yeah. I know Alejandro has to leave the call. We've been on since 7:30, so I'm sorry that he has to go. Any other things that we want included or?
So Melinda has said that she'd like to attend a site visit. I certainly will be doing it as well.
Great.
I in fact would greatly appreciate one last visit at the site if we were able to get something together the next couple of weeks before voting on the management plan. One of the things mentioned was a possible trail realignment and so forth. So as far as next steps from my perspective, maybe a site visit, the incorporation of this last language change, and I think I would feel comfortable, at our next meeting, to finally get something adopted.
We can
Right.
coordinate. I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, we can coordinate that through Melissa.
Yep.
Yeah, and if we have more than three members or three or more members of the board, we need to post that as a public meeting.
Yeah, I think this one would be nice to have as a meeting if you have a quorum, so that if you have questions while
Yeah.
you're on site about
Oh,
things.
yeah. We should probably just post it preemptively, once we get a date, even if we don't know how many people are coming, just preemptively.
Yeah.
What the
Sure.
other thing that we could do, if you would prefer, is we're happy to do 2 site visits.
Right. Well,
No, I
guess
think
we'll
we
check
just do one.
availability.
We'll just post it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Worst case, if we can't get people on the same date, then maybe we'll go to 2, if that's all right with you, DA.
Yeah, that's fine with us.
Okay. Because I know everyone's schedules are a little
Yeah,
crazy.
schedules are crazy this time of year, but we'll try to figure something out.
It'd be nice to have one, but yes. Okay. Perfect.
All right.
Right.
Anything else? No?
Thank
Okay,
you all
well,
as always.
thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Okay.
So I
I'll let
sent
Joe
Melissa a
go.
text. I'm gonna drop, folks. My cold is knocking me right on my rear end. So this kind of came on yesterday, and it's getting the best of me right now. So
Oh, boy.
I kept going on taking my camera off to blow my nose. So
But
You feel better soon.
yeah,
That's
you feel
like
better.
me too, Mark. I'm in the same boat. I feel like I have to jump too.
I got the flu shot. I got flu A and B this year. I've gotten it all.
I know, I was blaming allergies, but it feels like it's something else. So
No, mine's not allergies for sure.
Before you 2 leave, can we at least do the issuance for Edgewood just very quickly? So that I get both of you on the vote. So the conditions I have for that, for 28 Edgewood was the submittal of the vernal pool certification material to Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program within 12 months of issuance, which is the common condition we have on other properties that we've done, like at 5 Nathanstone and on Woodland Road. Invasive species removal plan, as included as one of the conditions. 2 years of monitoring for the vegetation in the rain gardens with an 80% success in perpetuity, and then just the ongoing operation maintenance in perpetuity. I sent those to Joe quick before he jumped off, and he didn't have anything additional as well.
Okay, sounds good.
So it'd just be a motion to issue the order of conditions as discussed for 28 Edgewood.
As discussed and recited by Melissa Danza.
So moved.
second,
All in favor?
Zulik,
yes.
Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I really needed you guys for.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope you both feel better.
Yeah, it's coming on fast. Good night, folks.
Good night.
All right.
So next up, 34 Sears Road.
Yes.
Enforcement order.
So this is the adjacent lot to 20 Sears with the remaining portion of the pipe. So I did put together a draft enforcement order. They were notified it's coming, they were at the hearing, etc. It very much mimics the conditions within the ANRAD, ORAD, and our order of conditions. I put it up on the Dropbox if you want me, or SharePoint, if you want me to share it right now, I'm more than happy to. It is kind of wordy, so it's totally up to you guys.
Now then, I think unless anyone else wants to see it, I think we gave it a fair amount of discussion during our past couple of meetings. I feel like we're all pretty much up to speed on the pipe removal.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome. So if so, then is there a motion to issue the enforcement order for 34 Sears Road?
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor by Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you.
And then we need to ratify the enforcement order for 200 Southville. So you guys authorized me to do kind of an intermediary enforcement order as discussed. So I did issue it. And now that we have a meeting, we should ratify it. I did have town council look at it quickly before we sent it out. All was well. And my only recommendation, unless there is someone here tonight for 200 Southville, I'm not seeing anyone particularly. If so, raise your hand, but I would suggest the commission at this point now issue a letter stating that their deadline has passed and their accumulation of fines essentially has started if we so decide to eventually do administrative hearing. And then when Liz Lyon from Town Council is back next week, I'm going to circle back with her to figure out kind of if there's additional steps that she wants us to take in pursuant to that, or because there's a lack of response, if now she will kind of continue to take it on in tandem with the Board of Health and the building zoning aspects of it. So I guess first and foremost,
So
I'm
you're
not
looking
seeing
for-
any hands
oh.
go up, so.
Oh, okay, so you'd be looking for a motion first to endorse the enforcement order that has gone out, and second to empower you to put together a letter just forewarning them that fines can begin to accumulate from the date of issuance of the enforcement order. Oh, actually, no, that's not true.
I think it start tomorrow.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
Can I just say what Ben said? Yes.
Yes. So moved.
I'll second that.
Perfect. Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right, awesome. So I will get that out, and then
Oh, God.
to
I tried to hear what's up next. Oh, gosh.
So yeah, I did an update at the last meeting. I'd say it's still the same information, but I have a little bit more numbers now. I really just got them today and yesterday, so I'm trying to digest them. I had a call with Taylor from TRC today to go over the numbers that Strategic has given us for the asbestos removal at the dump. It's a lot. It is a lot. I think that we will unfortunately be going over the 2.2 million, so there has to have a discussion with the select board. And my first step is sending out, I've been keeping kind of our internal finance team updated that there have been issues, but now that I have these kind of monetary numbers, I'm going to send out an email and have a meeting with our internal finance team to discuss what the next steps would be, what the process is. There obviously has to be some sort of change order with the contract with Strategic, which is built into the contract that was kind of a possibility for this project to clean up the farm dump. And then there needs to be a little bit
feeling for what a lot means.
Yeah. In terms of money or tonnage.
Time or whatever, however you're
So
quantifying a lot.
town meeting approved up to 2.2 million for the cleanup of the project, and that include both engineering services and the physical cleanup. So as of right now, we've cleaned up essentially or screened through a third of the soil that's about on site. So what's on left is about 2/3. It could be anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 tons of asbestos containing material that needs to be removed. And that is assuming about a 5-foot depth of soil. So it is a large amount. And at that number, it's about $323 per ton. So if we were to do 5,000 tons, the disposal rate alone is 1.6 million. And that, we do get some negated costs from the original proposal because now we don't have different disposal rates. We have less, just soil disposal rates, less solid waste because it's all being bulked out. The reason for this higher cost is because it is the asbestos containing material. which when we did the test pits, we had found in those test pits that the asbestos appeared to be in contained areas and in larger quantities that were easily removable and separatable, for lack of a better word. And since they have started to get more into the depth of the dump and further analyzing, they're finding that it is more commingled in smaller fragments. So it's not just, we had identified shingle and roofing materials or cement boards, which were bigger, easy to identify. But what's now underneath, they're finding like small pieces of things like tanzanite, which is white, kind of plasticky looking, and some of them are smaller than an inch. So those things do not get captured by the screener, of any size. It just wouldn't be, the contractor cannot accurately certify that what he screens out is 100% asbestos free. So because of that, the remaining 2/3 of the property will most likely, or has to, be called a regulated area in the terms of asbestos management. And because of that, the rest of it, we will still be trying to identify areas that we can still sort out and screen and leave on site. We found a large amount of big boulders that we're going to use to backfill with proper compaction as well to save on some of that importation of soil costs. And then ultimately, the biggest hurdle, one is just the cost of the asbestos, but now because of the tonnage, the triaxles or the dump trucks essentially that have been coming in and out are no longer a feasible transportation availability. They're too small, and the only accepting facility at this point is in New York. So because of that, they need to get a trailer access to the property, which means that they need to make a better access curving into after the bridge crossing, which would mean having to cut into the meadow a little bit more, which is the downside. What also, and I'm still waiting kind of for a little bit more of a cohesive plan of where exactly that area would come into so that I can go to stewardship and talk to them as well, because both Concom and stewardship, I've made it very clear to the contractor that both parties kind of need to be abreast of what's happening, updated, approving, etc., especially because it kind of impacts our restoration. But something additionally that I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on as well is that I think that the turn radius that they would need to make after coming off the bridge would most likely have to be put into an area that is flagged wetlands on our current plans. It will be temporary in nature, but my thought was, permitting wise, what is the commission looking to do for this temporary change for the access? Because it could be a temporary wetland resource area impact. I think it would at least come up right to the edge of the wetland. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes, it might be 5 feet into it. It could be long, it could be a little bit further, but if we wanted to do a full amendment process for an area that, is relatively minor in nature, that will be restored, is temporary, and is also unavoidable, unfortunately. There's just no other reasonable access to this site besides that entrance. And there's no other, the truck needs to make the turn, essentially. Like there's just
by
no
the
other
community
radius.
garden,
Yeah, yep.
And
So
Melissa, we're talking about less than 5,000 square feet of temporary.
oh yes.
Okay,
Oh
good.
gosh,
That
yes.
5,000
Yeah.
square foot numbers are really
No,
probably.
I'm talking maybe 100.
Okay.
It's just kind of like that lower edge. Maybe I guess I'll give myself a little bit. We'll say 500 max, maybe if it's a length.
Okay, good. Because then you get into
No.
Army Corps categorical.
Yes.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
So yeah, more so just in just that area. If the commission is open to accepting, you know, not necessarily a formal amendment, but an amendment as long as we receive a plan and impact, you know, information and restoration. And part of my thoughts about that was, you know, it is temporary. It is in, you know, it's unfortunately we've looked at all the alternatives. You know, if we had better access from an abutter, this conversation might have been different. But these are kind of the restraints that were cut to. So I'm looking to put together a little bit more of a plan. I really need to talk to stewardship and Concom once I have a better understanding of what that access will actually be and the extent that they need to turn. They gave me a quick like diagram of the general area, but we need to do a further assessment. I think they have some special math with turning radius that there you can go out there and double check. But that's kind of where we are now. So I think next week it's going to be first on my priority to figure out what that access looks like, talking to stewardship, and then figuring out what a restoration was. And if the commission,
For the
Yep.
impact you're talking about, I think an administrative amendment is
Okay.
the appropriate mechanism. I don't
All
know
right.
if one feels differently, that going through a formal amendment to an order of conditions is first, it's a lengthy process, and
Yeah.
we don't gain any additional protection to the resource areas for having gone through it.
Yeah, and it's, you know, the overall project is a mediation. So in my head, it hurts. You know, it hurts, but I think the money might be a little bit of a hurdle, you know, trying to figure out what that would entail. I would assume going back to town meeting, asking for additional, so making sure we have that support. So it's kind of status quo. We're on pause for a little while. I would say there won't be any work out there, you know, for at least a couple weeks. Depending on the change in access, they might remove some of the current access road that would no longer be utilized, but we need to have the final agreement of what the new change would be before they remove those swamp mats. So that will be forthcoming.
Can I just say, like,
Mhm.
is there no contingency source of funds in the town? Like the only ways to go to town meeting? Does the select board not have some discretionary funds? Is there any other place where there's money? I just think the last town meeting, like they were talking about NERI, they were talking about all these other things that the library, the other things that people really care about. Like, and this is one where the town has already put $2 million towards it. I just am asking the question. Is there
Yeah,
any
no,
way?
it's absolutely. So I have been looking, you know, in the kind of before we started this process and during, if there are any grants that are available from that front. The hard part about this project is that it's so unknown, and most grants you need a plan. You need to have your construction sequence. You need to have the cost. You need to have like and fit within this timeline. This project didn't seem to fit into a lot of, you know, even the like ecological restoration ones. Like we never quite met that box because it's a solid waste removal. In terms of town funds, unfortunately, I think the select board does have some availability for funds, but not to this level. Capital improvements like this often, you know, if it is enough that we have to borrow additional money, then that requires town meeting approval. And I think what would mostly happen would just be whether it's an amendment to the existing borrowing authorization or an additional authorization to borrow. But to your point is that's where kind of my concern has been coming in, is the financial discussions recently is that, you know, we have a lot of projects coming up and we don't have as high of reserves as we used to. So we need to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible. We have looked at alternatives as well, like maybe bringing capping back on the table. And, you know, and doing a very rough breakdown with Taylor from TRC, our consultant, it might save us some money to cap it, but you still have to remove, I mean, probably still the 5,000 tons before you cap it, and then you have to put 3 feet of clean soil on top. So that's the additional cost, and then you have ongoing monitoring costs. So while the initial cost might be slightly cheaper, the total removal and restoration, I think, still will be the more responsible and efficient route, both fiscally and environmentally, kind of moving forward. I wish we had this slush bucket of money that we could go into. I'm hoping it's not. I still need to do a little bit more compare. I have like a preliminary spreadsheet that I put out that has the original bid information, our for strategic environmental, for TRC, and then I've started to put in these new numbers to see, okay, this is getting taken out and this is getting put back in. So the 2.2, we've spent some of it, you know, because they've done some work, obviously, but the remaining of that funds that was originally approved in the bid won't be utilized. So we are now carrying that forward to the additional costs, if that helps at all. So like there'll be less soil import, so we can kind of move and shift what they bid united towards what this unexpected is.
But it sounds like no matter what, we're gonna be going back to town meeting. There's going to be a special fall town meeting this year. So that's
Yeah, and
scheduled. And one thing that does simplify things is we're doing this under an order from the DEP. The town doesn't have a choice. I mean, it's gotta be cleaned up. We can't just say, oh, you know, we'd rather spend the money on something else. We don't really have that choice. This is being mandated, so I think that simplifies the discussion a little bit at town meeting.
That's good, because we've all heard people not wanting to pay for, I mean, I had people after town meeting saying, why are we spending all that money on that dump?
I know.
It was a couple of years ago, I know, and it was before I was on the commission, but it is a lot of money for a small town.
It really is.
It is. It is.
Well,
I think
Melissa, thank you so much for being the point person on this. It sounds like it's a very stressful part of your job.
it's been something. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us expected some unknown.
Yeah.
None of us expected, I think, to have the asbestos wasn't what we expected, ironically. That wasn't what we thought was the unexpected. So we have less waste, but we have more asbestos containing materials. So, and it's very random what comes back positive, what comes back negative. Something that comes back negative might come back positive another time. And I know I and Taylor from TRC have tried every avenue to try and figure out what ways that we can reduce costs. And that's why we did some additional test pitting to kind of cross out some areas that we don't need to strictly export. We can continue to screen kind of along the perimeter of it. So I'm trying to find the best path forward, you know, while keeping DEP in the loop in the town. So I think by the next meeting, I'll have the actual hard numbers. I will send it out to you way before then, because I should be able to have those by next week. And then, you know, have whether it's something that maybe we have a joint meeting with stewardship one night just to talk about the dump. I think in this circumstance might be useful.
Sounds like a great idea.
I agree. And Melissa, I also agree with Ben. This is like not your typical duties. This is way above and beyond. And we really want to thank you for becoming a fast expert in
asbestos
removal.
Yeah, it's not what I thought I would be doing, but it is exciting. It is, I do get a slight thrill of watching them pull stuff out of there, I have to admit. But yeah, I think
is it the street sweeper?
yeah, it's there's a whole roof under there. Like, I just don't understand, but to each his own.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of hard conversations coming in the next couple weeks, but I think having them together will be a lot easier and more clear cut.
Great.
So that's where we are.
If there's any way that, if you need moral support or just, strength in numbers or whatever, say the word. And,
Okay. Yes.
Being the one who has to deliver bad news like this just sucks. And I
Yeah,
really feel
I
for
mean,
you.
I think what will be useful and to start to think about is most likely we'll be back to the select board, to discuss this, so if members are available to have those, that's always nice. I do see Freddie's hands up, so I'm just gonna allow her to speak. But yeah, I think there'll be definitely some areas that I'll need your backup
You
on.
bet. You bet.
Freddie.
Hi, thank you. And you're not going to need backup for this conversation. I understand how difficult this is. Difficult for us to,
Yeah, it's a
I'm
tough
sure,
pill to swallow.
I'm sure Kevin is feeling similar to how I am, but we have a stewardship meeting this Wednesday, so it would be great if we could have information by then. But you said something and I couldn't follow it well enough. You said 5,000 pounds to how many?
5,000 tons
Tons.
of waste, essentially, that needs to be removed.
But didn't you have a higher number?
Yeah, 5,000 to 10,000 is, so in talking with TRC today, he's like, we think that the 5-foot depth will be sufficient, but in the event it's a 7-foot depth, you should further worst case scenario by saying, the 10,000 tons would be the worst case scenario, which would be double the cost, which is heart palpitating.
Yeah.
And that's why, originally, I think Freddie, you were on one of the sites when we were talking about, the use of they're huge boulders. I mean, they're absolutely massive. And the first thoughts were, we don't want to put those back. We could get sinkholes, we could get whatever. But at this point, there's so many of them that I think it is worth putting them back, and we can still use them. Still have some left if we need some for perimeter boundaries, etc., because that was kind of our original thought. But yeah, just we're trying to find these little pieces here and there that we can try and help reduce the number.
So just two other questions from what you said. You said the turn radius when you come in over the stream, is that on the what we call the wetland mitigation if you're heading into the site on the left, or is that on the right?
So I think the
wetlands?
area that they would be cutting into would be the meadow, like straight ahead as you're going over, because they need to pull out further to then take that left.
I'm sorry, what left are they taking into the site? You mean?
So yes, or so taking the left, basically hanging a left right at that culvert,
Right after crossing the culvert.
right after the crossing.
And so the wetland impact is kind of straight ahead from the culvert.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
go with a little bit. Turn.
Yep. So it won't be
So
the
heading
wetland
right
mitigation
towards-
area.
Right towards, if I'm thinking correctly, just so I can, get a little time to digest this, right
Yeah.
towards where our water lines are.
That's what I was thinking.
And then it's straight across where we have the meadow beyond where they've already put the rocks.
Yeah.
road. So basically the meadow will be gone.
At the bottom edge.
There's not much left of it from where they've already taken. Nothing to be done. I'm just trying to
I know.
figure this out. And then no funds left to do any restoration work.
Yeah, that's
And no funds left to do restoration work of the meadow we spent 5 years installing.
well, I think part of, when they remove that riprap, there's still that open opportunity that I think strategic is very willing, if there's something that they can assist with in the, whether it's putting down a specific crop, cover crop or grass mix, etc. I think, Freddie, we still have a little bit of pull with some restoration, but I agree, it will not be to the full extent of
Well,
the current meadow.
you're going to encroach more on that meadow beyond where is, if my understanding's correct, you're gonna go across the meadow further up into where it's not already riprap.
Yes, but not in the area that they've already extended in. Let me pull
Okay.
up an aerial. Let me pull,
All
I
right.
think,
Just trying to
I
breathe
should,
here, sorry. And
no,
this is
no,
difficult
trust
for
me,
everyone, but
I know.
you know,
Let
the water
me,
lines, that's an issue.
yeah, I didn't,
But you know, given everything else, it's not that big of an issue. I understand we're talking a lot
it
of
still
money.
hurts.
Well, it totally changes a lot of plans and thoughts and work that's happened. And if we can make them go anywhere where it would be beneficial for them to take out stuff, that would,
Yep.
you know, where they put the road before and they said they could have gone in the woods, and we said if you
Yeah,
ask, we would
now,
expect you to go through the woods.
and Freddie, now they're gonna go through the woods.
Are
That's
they?
what's so frustrating, yeah. Because that's the only way that a tractor trailer can make it through. So
Well, at
let me
least we'll
bring
get
this
those
up.
invasives taken out.
Heck yeah. All right. So here's the community gardens right here. So they would be, what they would be cutting into is this corner here. So that is the wetland that would be temporarily impacted so that they can
And
make
stop
this
your finger
corner.
right now.
Yep.
That's where our one water line is.
You're right. There's a spigot
And then if you go further up
right here, I
to the
think.
corner is where the other water line is. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So at least be cognizant of it. And if we can, you know,
Yeah.
temporarily remove it instead of just losing it.
Yeah, we would definitely nothing. Yeah, we would not lose a water line for sure.
But
So they would
where the spigot comes out, you might.
temporary. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, just to be
No,
aware
you're
of that.
right. I totally forgot about thinking about that.
There's
Okay,
two
I
of
will.
them. So there's one
Yep.
there and there's one on the corner of, what's this orange line? Is that the road?
I think so. It's just pre-populated by GIS.
Okay.
Yeah, so they
So then
cutting
when
into
they,
this,
go ahead, they're cut in there and then what?
and then they'd follow the existing access road, and
Yeah.
then they'd cut through here. So they would then remove all of this that they put in sooner
That
rather
wasn't
than
the,
later.
that wasn't the, they're still going to be, these are tractor
Yeah.
trailers. Do you
Yeah.
see, can you come back down here? See that white line dotted? You can't see my marker. Do you see, if you go back towards the path, right, near where the orange line is?
Mm-hmm.
See that white dotted line over to you, just right there?
Like this, yeah.
That is a burlap bag trail we put through the meadow. And is there any way, like when they're going through, that they're not going to make the existing road wider? The existing road that they put in adjacent to the meadow is wide and in the meadow. Are they going to be making that wider?
No, no. I think
That's
the
wide
only
enough?
place that they would need to widen or add additional stone is just the corner to make it in, which is down here.
Okay. All right. So that other area stays the same.
Correct. Or if anything gets taken out sooner rather than later.
And some of this wouldn't need to be done if we had the other access that is not available.
In my eyes, yes. Because there's that little emergency access that's like right here.
Yeah, okay.
So theoretically, we could have, you know, this area and have them come in here, but
That's private property, is that the issue?
correct, yep. And they did not want to authorize access.
You know, it's disappointing, but you can kind of understand why.
Okay, so you'll have some more refined numbers.
Yes, and description plans, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you for working on it, Melissa. Thank you,
Yes.
Concom, for letting me ask my questions.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you, Freddie.
So one question about timing. So clearly June, July is out the window, right? So that parking area is going to remain closed and
It's open as of now. So I
Okay.
opened it up for the community garden because that opened this past weekend. So I moved one of the sawhorses down just to where the chain is. I realized that the chain hasn't been locking because I think they flipped the little pin on it, so it wasn't closing, but I fixed that, so it should stay up now. So I blocked off a little section where there's kind of a hump that they use to improve the access, but I'm gonna leave the parking lot open when they're not working as of now. And as that evolves, I've already let the community gardeners know that worst case, it's closed during the day, like working hours, but on nights and weekends, it'll be open.
But nothing for 2 weeks.
Yes, yep, at the very minimum. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie.
All right. So it's a lot to take in.
Sorry.
So next up, we have 12 Walnut Drive chicken coop.
Yes. All right. So I am gonna share this letter quickly that I drafted. Essentially, it's a very interesting situation. So on Walnut Drive, between the houses there's the Oak Hill and there's Walnut. So between those two rows of houses, there's the stormwater, swale, flowage, etc. That has been there quite a while. In the 90s. The town improved upon it, so because the neighbors were getting flooded out, and two of the neighbors who are back to back decided to pay, and the town approved. And I actually found the minutes. They came to Concom, they talked about it, etc. in like 98, to have it culverted in that point, so they didn't just have open water between their two properties. And essentially there is a chicken coop on one of the properties on Walnut that is in an area directly adjacent to this stormwater swale that does historically and consistently flood. So part of my concern in finding some of the drawings, DPW gave me some of their easement drawings that shows that this stormwater flowage is being piped through a culvert essentially, and then across the road on Walnut, and eventually discharges onto the town forest and is adjacent and discharging to a wetland resource area. So I took a little bit
Does
more
it
of
go all the
a
way to Woodland Road though? I was really surprised when I read that.
So
Discharges
it
over 25 Woodland Road, because that feels like it's sort of on the other side and very far away.
oh my gosh, that might be Walnut. Yeah, I think that's Walnut.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, thank you for catching that. Because it goes, so like 14 and 16 are on one side of the street. It goes down the property line, goes across the road, and then onto 25 Walnut Street, and then discharges kind of in their backyard, which on aerial maps does have wetland resource areas. It like at the culvert end. So in looking through our bylaw and our regs a little bit more closely, we do have a section that states our jurisdiction includes land subject to stormwater flowage. And in this instance, I 100% think that this fits that bill, because of the direct connection to a resource area. I do have concerns regarding the location of the chicken coop, as it is, throughout the year seasonally under inches of water. So all of the waste that's within that area will directly be discharged to the wetland on the town forest. So I am asking the commission that they, request or require I personally think require the removal of the chicken coop and move it further upland into the property to prevent this issue. I've talked with the animal control officer because we don't really have livestock bylaw or regulations. There's nothing really she can do. She stated, you know, if it floods, yes, they have to move it. But in my opinion, I know it's going to flood. And so I'd rather readdress it now, I guess.
Yeah, the one word that I might change in that sentence where after request and requires the removal, I think what we're actually asking for them to do is to relocate it.
Yeah, so
It
maybe
might
just
be a
the
little
relocation.
softer since we don't have, you know, necessarily, I think that just might be more accurate what we're asking them to do.
Yeah.
I think requires is the word we're looking for.
Okay. All right.
Would
So
you like a formal vote of support?
I would love a vote.
All right, would somebody like to move that we empower Melissa to send this letter?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
All right. Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right. And then just quickly, 14 Oregon. We had another animal complaint about goats at 14 Oregon. And doing some research, they've been there a very long time. The barn has been there a very long time. I didn't see any immediate concerns in terms of resource area impacts, wetlands. Yes, the barn is directly adjacent, but has historically been so. You know, I talked with the USDA people, you know, making sure that they weren't, originally they thought they were dairy, regardless. I think if the commission is okay to follow up on this, just sending a general educational letter about, you know, we've been made aware. You know, in my opinion, I didn't think there was a violation. They could probably even get an agricultural exemption because they've been producing commercially for so long. They do sell for fiber, and I think meat at markets, etc. So just an educational letter and kind of leave it at that is
So
if the
what is
commission's
the intent of the education? What is the message?
just that there are wetlands on the property, and you know, just to be cognizant of best management practices with farming and disposal of waste. You know, I usually offer if they would like to discuss with me on site, I'm happy to meet them out there. Otherwise, I provide them usually some quick links. There's a great kind of farming FAQ from the Mass DEP that they've put together. So, you know, sometimes I put those links into there, but just very much, you know, what is the Wetlands Protection Act? What are the wetlands that you have kind of adjacent and why are they important? And just kind of some suggestions of keeping an eye on waste management, and just kind of non-specific to goats, I guess.
It sounds fantastic to me.
Yeah. All right, perfect. I don't need a vote on that. That's just going to be general. So I think that's all
Well,
we have for tonight.
Other business as may arise. I just have one quick thing where trying to on community preservation. I'm the commission's appointee to the Community Preservation Committee. I'm the chair of that committee, and we are coming up on a statutorily required annual public forum. We host this every single year, and we beg and plead folks to come to it and to tell us about community preservation funded projects that they are thinking about or would like to see take place in town, or just to try to get a sense of what might be coming down the road so we can intelligently budget our resources. And that meeting is scheduled for June 6th. So I sent a gazillion emails out, and we've been doing outreach. You might have noticed the construction message boards around town are now flashing a notice about our meeting, and that's what it's all about. I know Kevin, you are on stewardship, who has done some community preservation funded projects in the past. Melinda, I recall hearing from Freddie that you're involved in the seed exchange in town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
My
don't,
speed lengths.
yeah, I don't know, it sounds like there may be somehow some potential that, you know, a CPA eligible project could result from that, I'm not sure, but, I just wanted to make everybody aware that this forum is happening, and if you know of anyone talking about maybe seeking CPA funding in the future, to get them in touch with us.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, and that's all I've got. So now we need one last motion. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right. Thank you to our final three for remaining.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right,
Sorry
thank
for
you.
the long meeting, but have a great night, everyone.
Thank
You
you.
too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.